Many thanks for staying on Joy News today to our very first story. Over the years, many Ghanaians have raised concerns about the frustrating traffic situation in the country. Now, many have suggested that an effective railway system could be the solution to this canker. But our railways and trains have for the past 30 years been in a deplorable state. What has happened to the once buoyant transport sector? Wanda Hagan finds out.
This is the sad, deplorable state of a once vibrant rail system. Ghana's railway system began operations over 100 years ago. In the 1980s, the train, locally called the keteke, was a major contributing factor to the development of the country, accounting for the movement of about 90% of the country's bulk export commodities. The country at the time had several efficient railway lines along the eastern, western, and central corridors. At the time, the railway had a track network of about 950 kilometers made up of the eastern, western, and the central lines. Most of these lines today have been closed and are not operational, leaving the total track network of the current railway at less than 100 kilometers. Some decades down the line, the story of Ghana's railway sector has become an ugly one. Today, the country has only 4 functioning trains and several kilometers of destroyed railway lines. 3 of these trains convey passengers and goods, and the remaining one is used for the haulage of manganese from Takoradi to Nsuta. The Nsawam and Tema trains are the only passenger trains operating now under extreme difficult conditions.
So it's been about 5 minutes since I joined this train, which is Accra bound from Nsawam. Originally, authorities tell me the train is supposed to have moved from one station to the other in 30 minutes, at most 40 minutes. It's however not the case, because this train has been traveling from Nsawam for almost 2 hours and is still yet to arrive at its destination. Now, this can be attributed to the deplorable state of the rails. The train itself is not in a good state, as there are indications of rust all over, and this coach, for instance, is supposed to have taken a number of 112 people, but as it stands, it's taking 160 people, this including luggage. Some people are standing in the train because its capacity is full.
Trains are supposed to be a safe means of transport, if not the safest. But some of the country's trains have become death traps. Some of its coaches consistently derail in the course of the journey, putting the lives of its passengers at risk. There have been some recent cases of derailment that left some passengers hurt, creating fear and panic.
What I say, we are quite before say we free bed domi, we free domi quite. What time that me see from a boom? Nan nitino a cock a nitino a cock a frozen barrier. Nay near war a boom, not eternal assassin a cheek at the aqua a typha. Young what you know, none it in your call. Near your cheek, your court typha a dangerous.
My fruit and I have said, if you say, oh, break, you know, I am one. What me, maybe I'm messing over track or sanity as I am by other fire. Then you have one of the morning you say, one of my, the gun on a man, one of and your one of my, may and yes, I am away, the ninja.
The Biamu company breaking yet, engine yet, Etasi de Bia, Minute back, Etasi, the face program power train of power. Ladders will be beer by our train. You ever see a change train, my? They change it train over new one, and better. And yes, I have to about this year. We are not going to vote this year.
There are dangerous gaps between the coaches, and the links between the coaches are in poor conditions. There are indications of deterioration in and outside of the wheeled vehicles. That notwithstanding, as dangerous as it is, some people cling to the moving trains as they speed along the rails. The poor management of the country's rail system is negatively affecting road users. The congestion on the roads leave commuters very frustrated and stranded, especially in the rush hours when they have to maneuver through the heavy vehicular traffic, spending several hours on the road in a bid to get to work or home. The focus of successive governments over the years have been primarily on building road networks, relegating the railway sector. Several roads and flyovers have been constructed by the various governments in a bid to deal with congestion on major roads, but the situation keeps worsening.
It's been difficult planning the route. You realize that we've not gotten into the rare Xmas period, but the traffic is heavy. Now it takes me close to about 1.5 hours to get to work.
You see, I have to set off from the house around 6:30, and it's past 8. I'm still at Kanishi, so you can wonder when I'll get to the office and when I can even start working.
All over the world, countries that have developed to the envy of third world countries have built strong transportation systems to ensure the smooth running of their economies. So what is the way forward? Looking at a transport means that will ease the burden of cost, aid in reducing congestion on the roads, keep passengers safe and comfortable, and aid in the development of the country in terms of export commodities. Rail transport is the best solution. Wanda Hagan, Joy News, Accra.
Meanwhile, transport expert Cecil Gabra has observed that Ghana's railway system is a failed venture. Mr. Gabra attributes the problem to negligence on the part of successive governments for failing to initiate a national policy to address the problems in the sector. He explained the congestion on the roads will be dealt with if more attention is directed at the railway sector.
We have failed as a nation. And, I say it as it is because it's a fact. We have really failed. Because if you look at Kwame Nkrumah's setup to develop Ghana on both transport and the railway system, we have failed. I'll give you a very good example. Pick up the ring road and ask yourself, why do you have this island? Let me use the word island for people to understand. Island in the middle of the road.
Because they are big, they are not normal median.
Precisely. You have a dual carriage, but there's an island which is equally big, quite bigger, like a whole dual carriage. That purposely was meant for a tramp. Okay, and a tramp is just, I'll say, a train that will run from Nkrumah Circle, let's say, to La. Okay, without maybe any interference. Okay, but then today it is still there. We don't have any national agenda. If we have a national agenda and we go back to documents of which Kwame Nkrumah left, you realize that we have, wasted over 50 years. And then the same is on the motorway, where we have come across documents of plans of Accra. And to be precise, this weekend when I looked at some, I was having tears running through my eyes. I said, so all this is there and we haven't implemented it? Right, we've had several governments, but we have lost it. Accra is fully populated now. If you look at the transport system, it is totally collapsed. If you wake up in the morning, you sit in a vehicle, you are coming to work, then you should know that you are going to waste a lot of time. The way forward, I believe, is we need a national agenda, so that if, let's say, we have change of government and then the government is removed or not, right? Any other government that comes must still continue with this trail system, okay? And we should start with the trams first. If we are able to put up trams, that alone will ease Accra immediately.
Away from the railway sector, it was implemented at the time. Majority of Ghanaians were calling for quality health care. But after years of its implementation, some Ghanaians are already disenchanted in the National Health Insurance Scheme. But Health Minister Mr. Alex Segbefia says the woes of the NHIS can be attributed to the exponential growth of its subscribers. This, he says, has ballooned the amount the NHIS has to pay in claims. He is, however, hopeful a review of the scheme, which has already started, will save the scheme from its current situation.
It's clear to me that from the National Health Insurance that actually the scheme has become a victim of its own success. But we are a victim of our success because of the numbers we are dealing with. We are paying almost 1 billion in claims at the moment. When we took office, we were only about 300 and something million. Sorry, 189 million. We are looking at 5-fold increase. It was clear that the exponential growth has created a problem. And for that reason, it has meant that we have had to review the scheme which has been done. The documents are now heading to the presidency. They will look at it, and subsequently, as I said, we will be able to review the position that we are in.
But Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, who represented the MPP on the health debate on the Super Morning Show, believes the Ministry of Health has not set its priorities right, thus the numerous agitations in the health sector.
Now it's more expensive to get into a nursing training school than go to a university. Under his watch, particularly. Not under any other Minister of Health. Under his watch. Nurses will have to pay about 4,000 Ghana cedis. Even the universities don't charge that much. You've cut their monthly allowance, and you are saying you're going to promise them what? Students' loan scheme. When the allowance was about 400 to 500 cedis a month, and the loan scheme the whole year is about 1,600. Why are you robbing Peter to pay Paul? And in this same ministry, they oversell forms to students who want to go into nursing training institutions. The oversell is that they have mounted millions. And what does the ministry use it for? Not even to plow it back into the training institutions, for especially when their budget was cut, administrative budget was cut so much. They decide to build MOH-TV, buy cars. This is the ministry that hasn't got its priority right. That's why there's so much agitation in the health sector.
Well, now, governance expert and political scientist Dr. Eric Odro-Osai is warning the suspension of several crucial social intervention programs, including the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty LEAP, by government for the first quarter of next year could cost it during this year's polls. Government, in allocating next year's budget, failed to make allocations for LEAP, benefits for lifeline consumers of electricity, subsidies on petroleum products and road arrears. Parliament approved almost 11 billion cedis for the first quarter expenditure of 2017. But Joy News' checks reveal there is no allocation to the social protection sector. Dr. Osai, who is also the Dean of Institute of Local Government Studies, says the action of government is not good enough.
Interventions are very important, looking at the nature of our economy and the type of country we have. Now, when you look at the way disbursements of social interventions expenditure are made, they are made after the first quarter. For instance, if you look at the Digital Assembly's Common Fund or even the LEAP or any other social intervention, the first disbursement would have to go in the first week of April. The reason being that the resources will have to be mobilized by the revenue generating agencies in the first quarter before the money can be made available. Now, the expenditure and appropriation that the Honorable Minister presented to Parliament, my understanding is that it is for critical recurrent expenditure that cannot wait the transition after any election, so that the government machinery, the critical elements of government machinery can run. But we all know that when it comes to social intervention expenditure, it is normally incurred after the first quarter. That is when the revenue has been mobilized. The expenditure and appropriation that the Honorable Minister presented to Parliament is in anticipation of critical government expenditure needed for the government machinery to run, taking into consideration the outcome of the upcoming election. So I don't think the fact that it is not in the estimates submitted by the Minister for Finance, it means that we are not giving priority to it. We are giving priority to it, but I think that the Minister is not prepared to tie any government act until the government comes to us. So that is how I see it. It is not a problem. It is not as if it will not be done. I think adequate provisions may have been made to allow the LEAP and the other systems to run up until such a time that the required amount can be dispersed in the first week.
And indeed, Doc, you are a governance expert as well as a political scientist. Looking at this, it's already out there. People who are poor in the villages expecting that at least within these 3 months, as usual, they will get their monies. Now they are hearing that within the first 3 months of next year, they may not get the monies they need. Do you think that 2 months to elections, this could in a way affect the government in terms of vote in any way.
Yeah, definitely. If gender and social protection, the ministry that is responsible for the management of the leave does not come out with a communique and then explain matters to the people, it is likely to affect the government because they think that is the problem for them. So I found the Ministry of Gender and Social Protection to come out clearly on the modalities they use, so that within this period, the first quarter of 2017, the leave beneficiaries and other beneficiaries of the existing social intervention program will not suffer. Else, if they get to know that they are going to suffer in the next year, it can affect the government in terms of...
Dr. One of the main responsibilities of a government is to protect the poor and vulnerable in society. And so, moving ahead, what do you think could be done to ensure that every transition year, something like this will not happen, where the poor that people are looking forward that they should be protected are rather, put on this side?
I think government should prioritize the needs of the poor. Government should not play politics with social intervention. Government adequate provisions are made in between transitional periods so that the average Ghanaian that is poor and so much on government will not suffer.
You're watching Joy News Today with me, Benis Abubedu.